Could the first round bye hurt the Mariners' momentum? We'll answer that and more coming up here on Mailbag Monday. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Monday, September 22nd, 2025. This is Todd Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5 Hour Energy shots. Go to 5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. And as always, if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, you can check out our Patreon. All you have to do to check that out is click the link in the description of this episode. We're going to open up the mailbag like we do here every Monday and answer some of your Mariners questions. But before we do, we have official word from Major League Baseball that the Mariners can officially clinch tomorrow night. Clinch the playoffs, that is. All they need is a win over the Colorado Rockies and a win by the Yankees over the Chicago White Sox, which is very doable. So a very shortened explanation of how that works is mathematically the Red Sox, the Guardians, the Tigers, because the Guardians play the Tigers and the Tigers play the Red Sox, they all cannot get to 88 wins, which the Mariners are only one win away from. And obviously they have the tiebreaker over all three of those teams. The only thing that could throw a wrench in that potentially is if the Yankees were involved in a tie as well, because the Mariners don't have the tiebreaker over the Yankees. But if the Yankees win tomorrow against the White Sox or at any point over the course of these final 6 games, then that part doesn't matter. So the Mariners can get into the postseason tomorrow night. And again, that is very doable because the Mariners are facing the worst team in all of baseball, and the Yankees are facing the worst team in the American League.
Yep, it's pretty clear cut. 2 good teams beat 2 bad teams tomorrow, and the Mariners will clinch their second playoff berth in the last 25 years. And it's pretty cut and dry. It's a little complicated. The math was a little complicated to work out. But essentially, once the Yankees reach 89 wins, there can't be a tie no matter what happens between you and them for a specific playoff seed. You would beat any of the other teams, the Astros even as well. You have a tiebreaker over everybody who has less wins than you. So you're in great shape. And but we thought maybe Wednesday was the earliest, but no, it turns out because of the end of the year schedule and because of the way the tiebreakers were laid out, the Mariners can clinch tomorrow, and they have a really good shot to do so.
Yeah. So the Yankees and the White Sox start playing tomorrow at 4:00 Pacific. Mm-hmm. So want to keep an eye on that, and you'll know by the time that the Mariners game starts, or roughly around that time, if the Mariners are going to be able to clinch or not. But yeah, if you want to try and see the boys clinch in person, might want to get tickets for tomorrow night. All right, let's get into your questions. Rich wants to know, with the potential of a first-round bye for the Mariners, how worried should we be about the prospect of a loss in momentum?
I mean, what's the alternative? You purposely lose games to try and play on the Tuesday after the season ends for no reason? It is what it is. I mean, there's nothing you can really do about it. And, frankly, I think Cal Raleigh could really use some time off without it, hurting the team. And obviously there's the whole Brian Wu factor that has to be put into play here. And also your bullpen could use some rest. And, Logan and George, they seem to pitch better with that extra day's rest. So you give them a week off, you might feel better about that. So there's just no alternative here. You have to go for it. You take the 3 games, and plus you guarantee yourself at least 2 home playoff games by taking that bye. And you only need to win then 7 games to get to the World Series at that point, instead of having to win 9. It's essentially like winning a playoff series. So, it's a fair question. Obviously, the whole rest versus rust thing is a debate that spans across sports in general. But, I think in this particular case, baseball is such a grind. And with the team and where they're at, their best player being an everyday catcher and their best pitcher kind of, not really sure how healthy he is. I think the pros far outweigh the cons. And let's be honest, if the Mariners lose in the ALDS, it's not going to be because they got 4 days off. It's going to be because they got beat. So Yeah, I really don't think there's really much of a debate here. You want to be the 2 seed. It is the best thing that can happen to you. Also, the 2 seed, you do get to play the winner of the 3 and the 6. So there's a chance you're playing, a team that had to use everything they had just to get into the playoffs and to win the first series. So there's real benefits there. There's just no alternative. Like you're not going to intentionally lose games to try and be the 3 seed. That you can play a day after the regular season ends. There's no reason to do that. So could it be a problem? Maybe, but it's kind of just one you have to deal with because the pros outweigh the cons, by a lot.
You want the bye. It exposes you to one fewer opportunity to get eliminated. And, in the ALDS, you don't even have to win on the road in order to advance to the ALCS. And this team is amazing at home. And obviously they just had a really good road trip. And hopefully they've put their road woes behind them, especially the pitching staff. But you want that advantage, right? You won't be forced to have to win on the road, really, unless you have to play Toronto in the ALCS.
At which point you would only need one road win.
Yeah.
So it's a fair question. I understand like the concern about it, but it's a no-brainer. You have to go for the 2, and you just have to take your chances.
All right, next question here from Jonathan. How do you prioritize rest this last week for several key guys while still aiming for the bye? What does the balance look like? I assume more Rayleigh, Ford, Young, and Rivas, but should they wait till a bye is secured before resting guys?
I imagine there's 6 games left, depending on when they clinch. If they, let's say hypothetically, they clinch by the end of the Rockies series, which is a possibility, I think you probably see Cal just DH 3 days in a row, especially if he is, which he is, still chasing 60 or 62 or whatever. There's a record on the line. They're going to give Cal his at-bats, and that'll probably be as a DH, though, which means, Polo probably isn't going to play, and that's fine. You can have Rivas play. JP can have a little time off as well. Randy Rosarena's played basically every game this year. I'm sure they would like to get Randy a day off and Julio a day off. But if you do get that bye week, there's really not a ton of incentive to do it because they're going to get 4 or 5 days off anyways, right after the season ends. So it's not like you have to bench, 3 guys for 3 straight days. You don't. You just kind of play it by ear and all that. But I think you'll see a pretty standard lineup against the Rockies on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then Thursday, we'll kind of see where they're at. But I imagine they'll probably give Harry Ford a start finally at some point.
Maybe even 2.
Give him a couple of at-bats so you can maybe get that first big league hit and because he's just been sitting here and he's lost a lot of time. I imagine Cole Young will actually get a few starts as well just to try and get him. They might have to make a decision on Young on a playoff roster or not, but I imagine Cole Young will get some at-bats as well. So I think you'll see some young guys. Rayleigh will probably play left field a couple of times in this 6-game stretch. I imagine Victor will play some center field once or twice in this 6-game stretch. Julio might DH one of those days, but I think mostly what you're going to see is just the regular lineup until they clinch. And then after that, it's probably Cal DHing for 3 straight days, and then Garver and Ford splitting the catching jobs. I imagine Julio gets some time off, in the Dodgers series. Robles will play center and Rayleigh will play right, or you might see Julio and Randy get a day off on the same day. But because you will probably have, as things set up right now, you would probably have 4 or 5 days off between the last game and the ALDS. You don't necessarily have to force it because they're going to get plenty of rest. So it's kind of one of those things where, if you was the 3 seed and you weren't going to get that time off, you probably want to try and get these guys a little bit more time in that last week. But because right now you're in good position to get those 4 or 5 days off anyways, you can be a little bit less aggressive with getting guys out of the lineup, if that makes sense, while still giving them like a day here or there.
Well, you also want to try and put these guys in bubble wrap after you get everything locked up, because you're not going to be playing for really anything in the Dodgers series if say you get everything locked up before that series starts or after game 1 of that series.
But you don't want to bench, for example, Josh Naylor for all 3 games against the Dodgers and then have him.
Well,
get
and
4 or
also
5 days off.
you can't also bench everyone, right?
No,
Just it's not possible.
Limit. Right.
Yeah, like
you
guys have to play
14 guys.
But we all remember what happened to Sam Haggerty there in those, what was it, the second to last game or the last game, before the playoffs. Like, you obviously don't want to risk any sort of injury, especially in what could be a meaningless game.
Sure, but there's only so much you can actually do to prevent that. Is the problem. So like with a guy like Josh Naylor, who's got the sore shoulder and whatnot, you might see Luke Raley play first base a couple times in the Dodgers series and stuff like that. But it's not the NFL, right? You don't have a second string for every position. You just kind of have to wing it and move guys around to best suit your roster. You only have 14 position players, so you can only bench 5 starters a day. So they'll do a little bit of everything, I think, but until they have that basically secured, I think they'll run out primarily their A lineup.
All right, we will answer more of your questions here in just a moment, but first a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Zippix and 5 Hour Energy. This episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Zippix Toothpicks. Whether you're looking for nicotine satisfaction or an energy boost, Zippix has you covered with their nicotine and caffeine-infused toothpicks. For nicotine users, Zippix provides a discreet way to satisfy cravings and the hand-to-mouth habit without vaping or smoking. Zippix can be a helpful tool as you work to reduce your dependence on vaping. Available in 6 great flavors with 2 milligram and 3 milligram nicotine options. And if you need energy without the crash, their caffeine toothpicks are a game changer. Go to zippixtoothpicks.com and use the promo code Locked On. That's LOCKEDON for 10% off your first order. Must be 21 years old or older to order. Warning: nicotine is an addictive chemical. That's zippixtoothpicks.com. Promo code Locked On. That's LOCKEDON. Zip more, smoke less with Zippix toothpicks. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5 Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. And what I love most is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot, you can take it anywhere and get that boost when you need it. So enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5 Hour Energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in store and online at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. For instant reactions following every Mariners game, be sure to tune in to the Mariners postcast with Anderson Hurst and Christopher Crawford, available on both the Locked On Mariners YouTube and podcast feeds. Let's get back into your questions here on Mailbag Monday. Cody wants to know, do we have a bullpen day in Brian Wu's spot, or do we call up a Logan Evans in his place?
I mean, it's also worth noting that, Logan Evans is just now starting to pitch in games again after his little injury. And I think he's only thrown 2 innings, like max, in an outing right now. So if it is Evans, you are going to have to bullpen it anyways. It's also worth noting that the Mariners could simply skip that spot in the rotation if they so choose. I mean, Logan would still be pitching, George would still be pitching on normal rest if they just moved him up one spot. So they have options here. Really, their only option if they're not going to move guys up, though, is some kind of bullpen day. There will be an opener. It might be Hancock. It might be Evans. But they don't have a stretched out guy on their 40-man right now. And I don't think they're going to want to DFA anybody this late into the year. They really don't need to because they have Legumina, who has options. So, yeah, I think it's probably a bullpen day. And it might be, Legumina as the opener and then Hancock as the bulk guy. And then maybe they call up Evans as, for somebody else, or maybe it's for Legumina. And they just kind of tag team it. But it is worth noting they can't skip that start if they so choose. And if Thursday's game means something, if they haven't clinched the 2 by Thursday, they might just have George Kirby go on normal rest. It would still be 4 days rest for George Kirby. He wouldn't get the extra day off, which would be nice. But, again, you're trying to clinch a number 2 seed here and get the bye. So you got to do what you got to do. But, yeah, I think if they don't do that, they almost have no choice but the bullpen, because Logan Evans just isn't in a place right now where he can give you 5 or 6 innings. And I don't think Emerson Hancock is either.
All right. Next question from Charlie: is the current playoff bracket, where it would be Cleveland or Detroit versus Seattle and Boston, or New York versus Toronto, the ideal playoff scenario? 2 seeds seems better at this moment. I think either scenario works out fine for the Mariners, because again, you don't have to win a game on the road. So I'm not worried about the Fenway Yankee Stadium element too much, because I just have to win 3 games at home to advance. And I'm not scared of anyone at T-Mobile Park. But yeah, I mean, like, yeah, if you ask me of the 4 teams who would I most prefer to face, yeah, I would say that the Guardians or the Tigers are at the top of the list, especially the Tigers with, you know, how things are going for them right now.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, any team in the playoffs is dangerous. Any team in the playoffs can beat you 3 times, regardless of where you're playing the games. So there are no easy routes to the ALCS or anything like that. But if I had to choose, probably Cleveland, Detroit, one of those 2 teams. I mean, Houston might be interesting. How healthy is Houston at that stage? I don't know. That would obviously be a big factor here. But if Houston doesn't have Yordan and they don't have Hader, and we'll see what's going on with Pena, like, you know, they're probably the weakest roster in the American League at that point, in the playoffs at least. So, yeah, there are a lot of ways you can go there. But I think, yeah, how it's set up right now would probably be quote unquote ideal for the Mariners. But we know Cleveland's a tough matchup for them. We know that Detroit is fully capable of going on a run. They were the best team in baseball for like the first 3 months of the year. Like, so obviously you have to face Skubal at least once in that series, maybe even twice. Yeah. So yeah, everybody's a little bit threatening. I think you feel good about going up, you know, going toe to toe with anybody. But yeah, I think the way it's set up right now is probably the most, again, air quote, ideal way to go about it.
All right. We got a couple more questions of yours to answer in just a moment, but first, a reminder: this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Nutrafol and Monarch Money. You've probably seen a million ads for hair growth products and thought, yeah, sure, like that actually works. And I don't blame you, because there are so many products out there, and it is so hard to know which ones are actually going to do anything. That's why you should give Nutrafol a closer look. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand, trusted by over 1.5 million people. And it's not just hype. This is a supplement clinically tested that targets the root causes of thinning and shedding with a proactive approach. See thicker, stronger hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. And for a limited time, Nutrafol is offering Locked On Mariners listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. And if you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with promo code LOCKEDONMLB. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Got a couple more questions here to answer on Mailbag Monday. This one comes from HamSwaggerty69. What's more shocking during this run? The Mariners and Guardians absolutely balling out, or the Red Sox, Tigers, and Astros falling apart? The American League and Major League Baseball as a whole has been so mid this year that some of these teams kind of falling off towards the end makes more sense to me than the Guardians and the Mariners just smoking everyone in their path, especially the Guardians. The Mariners make more sense because the Mariners, like, they went out and added at the deadline. They have great pitching. They have a great lineup. All, you know, the Guardians
lost their all-world closer.
Yeah.
Lost their number 3 starter.
Yeah.
They literally released Carlos Santana to give him opportunities to find a playoff roster to be a part of.
Yeah.
And now they're just unbeatable. Like it really is insane. And yeah, like the Guardians is by far the most surprising thing, more so than even the Mariners to me.
Yeah, that by far is the most surprising. Like the Tigers falling off, like, yeah, that is shocking. But also, again, Major League Baseball as a whole has been pretty, like, almost every team has been painfully mediocre this year. And, you know, to see a couple of teams kind of fall back to the pack doesn't surprise me that much, frankly.
No, I feel like I was kind of waiting for Detroit to do that because, like, I know how good they were last year at the end and how good they were for the first couple months, but I don't know. I just never really looked at that roster and was like, oh, that's the best team in the American League. Like, it just, so I'm not really all that surprised. Boston, we know about their warts and whatnot, and obviously Houston, injuries really piled up on Houston, which is a nice excuse for them to use. But, you know, also they were painfully mediocre for about 2 or 3 months now. Like, it's not like it just happened over the last few days. Remember,
and in a lot of ways, and in a lot of ways, I think you could also say that the Astros overachieved this year. Because, I mean, look, they traded one of the best players in baseball.
Yep.
They lost another one of the best players in baseball for pretty much the entire year in Yordan Alvarez.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, you know, they got incredibly hot there for a couple months and built enough of a buffer that, look, since the All-Star break, I'm pretty sure they're under 500. And they've been able to mostly survive that until the last, you know, week or so here, to stay in a playoff position. And, you know, it's very possible here over the, you know, next 6 days that they get back into a playoff spot.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say this, the most surprising thing that's happened in Major League Baseball this year, though, for me, is the Mets collapse. What we're watching the Mets do right now. They are not in a playoff position.
Yeah.
Like, and with that roster and that talent, all the money they spend, for them to be slowly choking away a playoff spot is unbelievable. Because unlike Detroit, you look at that roster, like, yeah, this is a good roster. Like, this should be a playoff roster.
We saw it firsthand. We saw how dangerous they are firsthand.
Yeah, and it just, you know, it hasn't been. So, yeah, I think the bigger surprise is, I mean, Cleveland is the biggest surprise in the positive for me. The biggest surprise in the negative would be the Mets. But like you said, the league in general has been really mediocre, and it's just been teams going on hot streaks and cold streaks. And there's just not a lot of teams are just playing consistently good baseball. There's 3 or 4 teams that are just playing consistently good baseball all year.
I would say the Phillies have been the most consistent team, because even with the Brewers have had to go on like multiple, like 14-game winning streaks.
They've had 2 separate 14-game win streaks. So, but yeah, the Phillies have been consistently good. Even the Dodgers had their moments where they were not that great.
Right around the same time that the Mariners were really going through it, the Dodgers were really going through it.
The Cubs have been pretty solid all year. You know, they just never really caught fire like the Brewers. The Yankees the Yankees will claim they went through some rough times, but they've been relatively consistently like in the same playoff position. Like the Blue Jays
immediately after the deadline, where their bullpen and all their bullpen additions were just
right. That was funny, you know, and it was bad for like a week, but okay, who cares? The Blue Jays have been pretty consistently good. So yeah, but other than that, every team has kind of had these big months and these terrible months, and they just kind of ebbed and flowed. And you know, it just is what it is. I mean, the Minnesota Twins had a 14-game win streak in April. And they ended up selling at the deadline. So like, the league in general has just been so mediocre, so inconsistent, that none of this is terribly surprising, with the exception to me of the Guardians, who took steps to get actively worse at the deadline, much like the Tigers the year before. And they probably right now are the favorites to win that division, even though
the Guardians
they
almost traded Stephen Kwan at the deadline.
Yeah. There was reports on the morning of the deadline that, we feel like Kwan's probably getting traded. And they didn't. And so it is really wild what's happening in Cleveland. Not to undersell what's happening in Seattle right now. That's also crazy. But again, Seattle
It just
added
makes
at the deadline.
Yeah, it just makes more sense for Seattle. Like if you told me like these two teams are going to go, or one of these two teams are going to go on a hot streak, which one are you taking? It's Seattle 10 times out of 10.
Yeah. So, I would say the Cleveland thing is the most surprising. So I guess to answer your question, the winning streaks of the Mariners and Guardians are the more surprising aspect of this playoff race.
All right, next question here from Joseph. With the Diamondbacks being one game behind, do you think they regret trading Gino and Naylor to us?
No. Again, it took an epic collapse by the Mets for them to even be close to this position. And if they can get in and they can sell tickets because they're close to making the playoffs, which they've been able to do, while also getting value for two players they weren't going to re-sign, sounds like a win-win to me. And by the way, Zach Gallen's rebuilt a ton of value. They didn't trade him at the deadline. And now they're probably going to be able to QO him and get draft picks for him as well. So this worked out really well. I mean, I'm sure Diamondback fans would prefer to have them, but I don't think the front office really regrets it at all because, again, at the time they made those trades, they were dead. Like the NL wild card was basically, we knew who was going to make the playoffs in the National League. It was just going to be
even in light of the Locklear injury.
Yeah, I don't really think they were trusting or they were counting on Locklear all that much, but no, I really don't. I think fans might regret it because they're probably looking to be like, man, if we had those two guys, we'd probably be in the playoffs right now. But I think from a baseball ops department, they handled it perfectly. I think from a ownership perspective, they're probably really happy with this too, because again, they were able to save money by trading some veterans. And then they also managed to stay in the race somehow because the race kind of fell back to them. And maybe just big picture thinking here, teams will look at the Diamondbacks and be like, or the Tigers from the year before and be like, hey, they sold at the deadline and they were still in a playoff race because kind of everybody's in a playoff race until, early September at least. So, and this time they happen to go to late September. So I think, the people who work for the Diamondbacks, I don't think they regret it at all. I think Diamondbacks.
So what you're hoping is that maybe this incentivizes more teams to sell at the deadline.
Yeah, be a little bit more like, okay, well, I mean, we could sell and still be okay. Like, especially like selling rentals, selling short-term options where they can be like, look, I mean, it's not like we're trading Corbin Carroll or Ketel Marte here. So, but could we trade this rental option even though we're not fully out of the playoff race right now? And yeah, maybe. And for a team in Seattle, which is the only team we care about with the window they're in, that movement by, or that idea that like, hey, we could sell and still compete a little bit here because everybody's so mid, that would actually really benefit Seattle as it did this year.
Yeah. Yeah. Because obviously, the Mariners, what is their most likely path to add talent? It's the trade market.
Yep.
So if more teams are selling, then that's good for the Mariners as long as they're in a competitive spot.
I mean, the Cubs and the Astros pulled off a huge trade and both of them were, playoff teams for most of this year. The Cubs are, and the Astros still could be. And they traded Kyle Tucker and they still competed. And, the Cubs traded their starting third baseman and their best prospect. And even though Kyle Tucker hasn't been that good for a couple months now, they're still totally fine with that trade. So I do hope that, just to be selfish and bring it back to Seattle, maybe the trade market thaws a little more as teams get more and more data that show like, hey, we can still trade these guys and compete and sell tickets, which we know is really the big driver of ownership, is to be competitive enough to sell tickets in August and September. Well, you can still trade those guys and still do that because all it takes is, a handful of mediocre teams to get hot and cold at the same time. And you're right back in it like Arizona is right now.
If I was Arizona, I would regret it. I would rather have the couple of months of Geno and Naylor than what I got back, especially in light of the Locklear injury. Well, there you have it. That's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Titan Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Titan Gonzalez. Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. We're also on Blue Sky. You can follow me at TDG. Colby at MLB Colby, and the show at Locked On Mariners. You can also find us on Instagram at Locked On Mariners. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.